So, Chris, you're a guy who's been known to love building through the draft, and now you're not picking until 102. One, is that going to be strange for you? And two, what was the thinking that led to that?
Well, I think the last time I was involved in that was when we didn't pick until the third round years ago. When we took the McKinney from Texas A&M years ago, and it was a pretty boring day one, But we had been building here for a while, since we took over, just trying to, acquiring picks and cleaning up salary cap and stuff, and so. I think it was the opportunity to add a good player, a very dynamic player. It's one that we feel is one of the best players in the league. And when those opportunities come, we just felt, you can't pass on it. And I think we had spent the last few years, like I said, building and getting the roster to a point where we feel like we can start competing. And at the end of the day, being able to add a player of his caliber, we just felt it was too good to pass on. And to do deals like that, you always need good support from ownership and Steve, Tom, and then Brandon working with the agent as well to finish up the deal.
When did you realize that was a reality to get a Tyreek Hill?
I would say it was probably we had first heard it was last Friday, I believe it was, or before the previous Friday, and they reached out and we were like, there's no way we can do this, And then as we looked into it and talking it over with, again, Steve, Tom, Brandon, and we're like, we can find a way to make this work. And so we looked in, and then, and obviously to make a deal like that, you have to great partners. So Brett Veach and Coach Reed were tremendous to dealing with over. Um, it was about a 5-day period of it trying to come together. And so we were fortunate, and thank them for their patience as well. And we feel good about adding Tyreek.
Chris, wanted to ask you about, I'm sorry, I have one quick thing. I'm going to ask you about inside linebacker and safety. A couple fans have asked me to ask you if you all are pursuing Tyrann Mathieu, if that's an option, and then the decision to come back with this inside linebacker group. You're thinking on that with a Landon Duke,
Yeah.
Jerome obviously under contract.
No, we're not pursuing Tyron. Good player. I think he'll be a good addition for any team in the league, but no, we're not pursuing him. Inside linebacker, Landon is a leader on the team. He's we're still a young defense, and his presence and his communication skills, and he and Josh, are on the same page in terms of thinking about how running the defense. So that was a huge part of it. And then Duke Riley had done a great job for us, in his role competing for playing time and special teams, and in terms of what he added on and off the field, a quality person. And then bringing Scarlett back as well. So they're all, guys that are tough, competitive, smart, good kids, and so we felt good about adding the group, bringing them back together.
So you were building for several days with the Hill trade, and then ultimately it came down to, I don't know, a phone call or text or whatever. Take us through that minute when you found out, yeah, he's ours. What was that like?
I was at the Ohio State Pro Day, and I told Tyreek he was wasting my time here, that I was watching these two receivers from Ohio State. So I go, he owes Mr. Ross some more money since I paid for that flight and that hotel room overnight. But very excited. Frank Smith was there with me. We kind of fist bumped, and then a bunch of coaches were around us, and and they cursed and were like, but congratulated us on the great move, and so no, we were very happy, thrilled. Very excited. Tyreek was very excited on the phone. We talked to him, and so again, we felt blessed that we had the opportunity to add him because he's such a tremendous player and person.
Can you touch on the linemen that you added, Ron Armstead, Connor Williams, and the fits for them here?
Yeah, I think when Mike has assembled a really good staff, and it's very heavy offensive line coaches, and I think he's done a great job in terms of communicating that vision for what he wants. And so I think for us, we feel good about the young players we have, as does Mike and the staff talk about them. They understand they need to play better and can get better, but I think the scheme also is very friendly for offensive linemen. And I think Teron had mentioned that in his press conference and wanted to play in this scheme. And Connor Williams was another one that we felt excited about because we think he's a very good run player. And is also he's very athletic and can pass block. And I think, like anything, they all keep working, improve, and get better. And so we're very excited about the group overall.
What's the thought process at center? Michael Dieter entering the final year of his contract. Obviously, he's had pretty
up and down career here in Miami, do you feel like there's still developmental upside for him?
Yes, we do. Mike really developed as kind of a leader. He became much more vocal. He had an injury last year that was kind of a freak injury. Our doctors had said they hadn't really seen anything like it when they were kind of, going through that with him once he got hurt. So he really hasn't played a ton of games at center still. Interesting thing about him is that every year, which is off season, we've had multiple teams call and offer us picks for him. So he's thought of pretty well around the league still as a player. He knows there's still a developmental window for him to go, but he'll have competition at that spot as well.
The Tyreek contract, what was the thinking? I mean, he's obviously the highest paid wide receiver now in league history. How did you come to the point where you were comfortable with that contract?
I think it's like anything. As other moves are being made around the league, and you start seeing, the structures and stuff of those contracts. But at the end of the day, it was about adding the player. He was such a unique talent, and for what Mike and I were talking about, what we needed on our offense for, those dynamic catch and runs. Obviously, with Waddle, we added Cedric Wilson, and then, arguably Tyreek's the best run after catch receiver in the league. So the opportunity to add to the offense for what he does and the skill set we were looking for, we couldn't pass on. And obviously, you could do a deal like that is talking with ownership, and Steve and Tom were fantastic in terms of what we were looking for, and then Brandon did a great job of working through with the agent to finish up the deal.
What's your vision for returners? Who you see competing at that spot, and will you find a punter in the draft? Are you waiting for the draft to find a punter?
In terms of returner, we have multiple guys now. Tyreek's first thing he said was, he goes, "I want to make sure I'm back there getting a couple of returns every game." So we're fortunate with him, Holland, Waddle. So we have guys that could do it. They're all, big contributors on their side of the ball as well. And then we also have a couple guys too that can return. So we're not really worried about the return game, and we'll see how that all sorts out. I would say punter, we're still looking. There's a lot of veteran kickers out there, like there always are. And so we'll go through that process as well as the draft process.
What was the thought process on tagging Mike Gesicki, and do you expect that he'll play on the tag as opposed to, continued potential long-term contract discussions?
Well, I think the one thing with Mike is that, at the end of the day, I think you saw a bunch of tight ends got just tagged, with that market. But Mike's a good player, and our intentions are to keep good players. We don't like to let them go. But Mike, he's a very competitive person, as you guys know, they've been around him. He's going to play, and then we'll have some discussions with his agents at some point in the future. But I have no reservations that he's going to not play, because he's too competitive, he's too good a person, he loves football.
Rich made 11 picks in the top 100 the last couple of years, and now you have no picks in the top 100. Use those resources on Tyreek Hill, and a lot of those 11 players are some of your biggest producers. Does that kind of have a correlation to the ability to be so aggressive this time around and use those premium resources on a veteran like Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, it's, like we talked about, we've been building here for the last few years. So the chance to get aggressive and add a talented top player position was something we just felt was too good to pass up. As we feel like good about the players we've drafted, but the great thing about all those guys, they're all very competitive, and they know they can still get better and work. And that's been exciting to watch those guys. They've been all off season working, and they pop by the office. So they're young guys that love football, and they all want to keep working to get better.
Chris, is there any update revisiting Xavier Howard's contract? Do you have kind of a timeline for when you'd like that to be addressed, and maybe not avoid what happened last summer?
Yeah, no, we've had conversations with Xavier and his agent. We've had them a couple weeks ago in person. We'll keep those conversations to ourselves. We don't negotiate through the press, but hopefully we'll get to a resolution sooner than later. Xavier's done a lot of good things here for this organization. I've known him for years. I was here when we drafted him. He was my second draft pick here, and so looking forward to him being here and helping us win.
Couple final questions, guys.
Going back to Travis's question with the draft picks and such, 3 years have passed since you made the Tunsil deal. I don't think you could have imagined all the picks that have come from it, or all the players that have come from it, and how big of an impact that deal has had on your tenure here. When you think back on Larry Tunsil and trading away and everything that came back to it this year and now, what does it mean to you to kind of be at this point now?
Well, Well, I still remember the day we traded him. I was crying. I was like, we both were, because he's such a good guy, and every once in a while he'll text me just like, hey, but he's we made that trade. It was still, you find a young franchise left tackle, which everyone's looking for those. So, but in terms of the return, yeah, I never would have guessed that it would have led to all of this, and I still don't, follow the whole in terms of what I think someone told me the other day, all the what we ended up acquiring based off of it. But at the end of the day, you just keep trying to do what's best. You hope for the organization and what we feel good about, in terms of trying to build a team that competes for Super Bowls here. So.
Chris, regarding Tyreek Hill, can you describe the type of background work that the organization did relative to any off-field incidents that may have occurred in his past?
Yeah, I think going forward, we feel good about it. We talked to a number of people who had been around Tyreek, especially in Kansas City the last few years. And so for us, we're comfortable moving forward. And the expectation, like him, will be for every player in the roster to be, a good teammate and good citizen in South Florida.
Chris, you're adding
obviously trading for Tyreek and silencing what Devontae Parker's future with the team. Obviously, I don't think his salary is guaranteed for the second season. You intend to have him on the roster in 2022?
Yeah, we like having good players, So, we feel really good about that receiver room. I think the expectation is, he'll be here, but we always listen. I've always said here, the guys that know me will always listen for all players on the roster.
Have you gotten any calls since, have you gotten any calls to start something about Devontae?
Yes, I have.
Final question, guys.
I wanted to ask you, you talked about being aggressive. This was a time for the player to be aggressive. Why do you think it's that time, or was it just the player?
No, I think it's kind of what we talked about in Indy. This was not a rebuild. This was, finding the right players, right pieces, right time. And I think we've, acquired a lot of young talent coming in. But if you find good veteran players that are good, not only good players, but leaders, as well as people talk about Tyreek's leadership there in Kansas City. The Saints all raved. Here Mickey Loomis stopped me again. He's one of the best human beings you'll ever be around. So I think for our roster, if we can add, however people, blue players, as people call, those top players at positions in the league, especially if they're great leaders and veterans, for these guys, I think it's a great opportunity for us. So we just felt this was the right time to really be aggressive.